Howdy! Welcome to Sneppurrsode 4 of the Where Are We podcast. I am Orange Wolf, and today we are joined by Blue Wolf and Badger Wolf. I kind of want to see Blue's face right now.
I'm just pinching my nose.
I'm face palming.
So, unfortunately, it's still 2020, and there's a lot of stuff going on, so we wanted to kind of check in, and I guess we all have some words as far as, I guess, how to support each other in this time.
Yeah, we're in a unique time here. It's definitely, on top of COVID, now we have, as we're recording, the recent death in Minnesota and the associated protests that have kind of broken out across the country here, and, everything that's kind of happened as a result of that. And it's times like this that, to me, it's a point that a lot of people will turn to religion and spirituality and try to make sense of this stuff and, refine their moral compass. And that's really kind of what we were thinking about talking about anyways, so it's a good segue for us to have that opportunity. For me, I know my heart goes out to everyone who has been affected by this directly, and our thoughts and love and everything is with you. So, but we don't want to get too much into that and stay more focused on what we intended to talk about, which is really spirituality. Like I said, it's a time that we see a lot of people turn towards their religions, and then you can get into the nuances of spirituality and, all the gray areas between shamanism and Wicca and, native traditions and all those things, and what works for us may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for everybody. And I think what I see a lot of times in the Therian community is we tend to gravitate away from organized religions. I don't see that necessarily as a good or a bad thing. I don't think it's a negative to be associated with an organized religion. There are obviously downsides to that could fill up an entire library, honestly, depending on what your experience has been. Not all has been positive, but at the end of the day, it really does provide a community and a structure and an approach that really helps a lot of people out, and I think that is something that should be taken as a positive away from it. I know that for me, I once was in San Diego and was at a mass, and this is after I had kind of already rediscovered myself and my own path. But I was watching these. It was a unique opportunity to watch these folks get up on the pulpit and talk about their experience of what they had gone through and how the church had helped them. And what I was hearing and what I was thinking were so in line, but at the same time, what they were talking about was so new to the congregation. They had really gone through an awakening in themselves, a spiritual revitalization that just happened to come through that religion. And I saw that as kind of a positive, and it really made me think that, this isn't all bad. People can find their own path and, experience something amazing through this. I just didn't, which led me to go a different way. And I remember talking to a coyote who was a boss of mine, and as he put it, religion is kind of like a structure, a framework, a trestle, if you will, for others to have spirituality grow into. There's pros associated with that because it's nice and well trained and structured and everything, but at the same time, that may not be for everybody, or you may find a point that doesn't really fit what you're experiencing and what you want to experience. With that said, Everstormy, do you want to add anything to that?
I just, like you said, everyone has their own beliefs, their own spirituality, their own religion, and it's okay if you're still trying to find yours. It may take some time. It ain't gonna, at one point it will just click for you, but until then, keep looking, keep open-minded, keep searching. You'll find yourself.
That's a point that I would like to expand on. Again, things like religion do offer a sort of stability or structure, and right now, in the current state of things, that's something that we all need some degree of security or structure. The problem is that sometimes, if it's taken a little bit too rigidly, it can cause more issues. And I think that, in the grand scheme of things, this is a time where everyone should try to figure out how to work together with each other and um, how to improve things despite the differences that we have in those ideologies or religion or anything along those lines. It's a good thing to have that structure, but I think that the world that we are living in right now is also giving us a lot of opportunities for growth.
Agreed. And I think that one of the biggest things that's missing from, that we see a lot of times in the religious context and in the spiritual context, and even more so right now with everything that's going on, is listen. Listen to what is being said. For
What
me,
was that?
I really wish you were here because I could smack you at that point. Um, One of the things that I always, started to do when I was beginning down my path, and I was raised Roman Catholic, and I had a very good experience, honestly, with that. Surprisingly, for most people's experience, it's not been the most positive. But I was in a small congregation. It was very close knit. We had a wonderful pastor, and he was genuinely caring, and was always trying to help, further things. He did a lot of volunteer work as well within the community. But when I got to a point that I started to ask questions that, it wasn't so much him, it was others within the church, and then the dogma of the church kind of coming down and saying, no, that doesn't fit. And it didn't jive with me, which ultimately led me to, start to question it. And then, I had the opportunity to attend a university that was also in the Catholic subset, and I got to see the hypocrisy of it, with between the monks and the nuns that were teachers there, just how out of touch in so many ways, and how much hypocrisy from what was taught in the religion to what they were doing was just mind blowing to me. And it was like, these are very well respected, very well thought of, high ranking individuals within not only the university but within the structure of the Catholic Church as a whole. It boggled my mind, and it really kind of made me ultimately turn away and start to do a self-exploration, which took 10, 15 years before I really found what I was looking for. And even that, I'm still learning. But through all that, in a roundabout way, I guess, it made me start to ask questions and listen to others. So I've made it a point to try to find the parallels for the religions and spiritual paths and everything like that, and I try to find those commonalities and have the discussion around those. I think it's much more useful and productive, and you find a lot more, and it also tears down a lot of the dogma and the I'm right, you're wrong, my path is right, your path is wrong. Once you find that commonality, you're talking as a person to another person. And even if we disagree at that point, there's respect. And again, I think that really ties into a lot of what's going on too right now, and just more parallels. If we just listened more and respected each other more, we don't have to agree. That's an important thing to make note of. But it's important to at least listen and respect, even if you disagree.
One thing that kind of interesting about my own path, I was born and raised Christian, and went the Baptist route and things. My family kind of nudged in that direction, and I remember as a kid, younger on, religion to me was so full of love. It was about respect and about appreciation and admiration and growing with others and healing, and as I grew older, it turned into something bad. Like my, uh, I struggled with my therianthropy. I struggled with my sexuality just because of how other people interpreted some of what their interpretations of the Bible were, or what God's will was, or things along those lines. And it's it's almost like that damaged my spirituality in a sense. I had to actually back away from religion myself to be able to position myself in a way where I could, I don't know, like you just said, approach other people as individuals. For some reason, in the institution that I was in, I couldn't. I was seeing the hypocrisy all around. I was feeling guilty again because I was gay, and because I had these my mental shifts at the time were sometimes terrifying to me. So I thought that they were evil based off of the religious teaching that I had, and um, I felt that I was guilty feeling constantly, and yet I was seeing those around me who were in the position to be leaders or teachers. They were cheating on their wives. They were doing illegal things. They were not being very righteous. So, that whole thing. Too, I also took a hiatus from religion to discover my spirituality, and I don't necessarily think that the two are exclusive. I think that there can be spiritual Christians. I do think that religion and spirituality are separate in that sense. I think one can lead to the other, but I think it takes a lot of soul searching to really become spiritual in that regard. I don't think that it's something that can really be taught in a traditional way. I think it takes a lot of life experience, and really it does take compassion. I think it's important to me, as a non-Christian now, to still learn about the Christian religion and to learn about other religions of the world too, because like I said, there are some things between the religions that still do sync up. There are foundations that essentially kind of guide people to be decent to each other, and I think it's very important, wherever you come from, your ethnicity, your region, your religious background, anything like that. I think it's important to try to take that cultural aspect of it and to be able to learn and relate to each other.
Agreed. I think that, I know for me, I struggled a lot once I started to open up my mind to therianthropy, and, I was discovering, those aspects of myself before the days of the internet. It was just in its mere infancy at that time. It certainly wasn't accessible. And it led me to some interesting places, and it led me to try to have meaningful conversations with spiritual leaders, with my parents, that never really went anywhere. Which, much like the conflict that was being generated as a direct result of that, and trying to reconcile that, was not really healthy in a lot of ways for me. And it took a long time to, try to initially pack it back in and say that's not me, that's not part of it, and I'm going to go the path that I was on, and embrace that. And there was good things associated with that, but there was still questions that were still unanswered to me that I still couldn't get the answers for. That and the need to explore and find myself. And every time I went into nature, especially, that's where I found the peace. That's where I found my core. It's be it in the middle of winter and on skis, in the middle of nowhere on a cross-country trek, or in the middle of summer just kind of wandering through the woods or the swamps that, I grew up near. I found a lot more harmony and peace and centering there than I did anything else, but, that was important, and it didn't feel rote, which, to me, for me, that's really what religion became. It was very rote. It was, here's the things you do. this is the formula. You just make it happen. And I saw a lot more people as I became aware, just more cognizant, really. That's all they did. They followed the formula on every Sunday. They did what they needed to do. They did their tithe. They, confessed sins and, did all the right things and talked all the right ways and, acted all pious. Well, at the same time, we're doing terrible things in their regular day life, but we're considered, the pious. It just, those things never reconciled for me.
Same here, and in a loose way, it almost reflects how I grew up socially, because I saw people kind of doing the human socialing thing in the ways that we're supposed to, and for some reason it just didn't work for me. I tried doing things by the rote mechanism, and it felt hollow, either socially or in a religious aspect. It never felt fulfilling to me, and there were times where I felt the love that I thought that I was supposed to feel, but something just didn't feel quite right in that regard. But like you're saying, just a trip out to nature, and it's like I fell in love with everything around me. I didn't need anybody to tell me how to feel or what to think. It's like my emotions just kind of, they were in rhythm with the nature that was around me. I found natural harmony, and that was a little different for me. But it's interesting because the way that I was raised, I felt that was wrong too. Like, I wasn't supposed to be that way, so I can't be that way. So I kind of pushed that away, and I think that was a little damaging too in the long run. So it's a complicated mess.
Yeah. I for that ultimately led me on my path, once I kind of realized all that, I looked at all the concepts of religion and spirituality and structure and everything and said, yeah, no, been there, done that, don't want to play with this. So I just kind of did an amalgamation of my own and tried to experiment with things. And, I toyed around with a lot of different things. I did, things from runes to tarot to, trying to learn out of bits and pieces out of books to bits in shamanism to, it was just throw it in the pot and see what comes out and see what feels right and goes right. And that amalgamation, worked for me for a long time. I felt that I made significant progress over time. Ultimately kind of peaking on a trip with a vision, for lack of a better term, of the wolf spirit, and having a conversation with them, and then some remarkably notable memories associated with that. Though I don't remember what was communicated per se. I remember how I woke up and what had happened just prior to that, which made it seem all the more real. And I never was able to really kind of reconcile that with my rational brain, and how that happened, but I couldn't deny what I had experienced at the same time. And that point really kind of pivoted me onto a different path, which eventually I took, and found a teacher who took me under paw and really helped me hone what I am and who I am. And as I've kind of explained it to a lot of people in the past, or because I lead ceremonies and things like that, it's not necessarily most structured or formal per se. There is a structure, everything to it, but it's not a formal and pompous and highfalutin and all that stuff type of thing. It's much more down to nature, and even keel, and that ultimately led me to help others with that. And they're like, well, I wish I could do this, or I wish I understood this better, and because they get a lot out of the experiences. And I had to always explain, think of it like a lens. We all are a lens at the end of the day. Some of us are just more honed, and that honing takes time, experience, desire to learn this stuff, and ultimately the execution on that. And anyone can do it. It's a matter of, are you going to put in the effort to it? And that effort may be more for some and less for others, just due to disposition, or whatnot be. But it's not something that's to be the elites take care of this stuff, like the druids and the priests and all that stuff. It's not that. Anyone can access this if they want it. And it's just a matter of how do you get there. And that's your experience and your desire to find what works for you, and then potentially, if it works, if it's the right thing, find someone to help you with that path, or someone's to help you with that path, and be open to the experience. And that can be a difficult thing. I'm still ultimately an engineer at heart. I studied the natural sciences, and I have to reconcile these things that I can't always quantify what the experience is and where I am and what I've done and how it's happened, to something that can be pulled out and measured and taken an objective look at. And that's a conflict in myself to this day that I don't know how I'm going to reconcile, but at the same time I can't deny or dismiss what I've gone through.
You had mentioned earlier about trying out a bunch of different things, trying to find your place. I also did that. I referred to it as search mode, where you're trying to find what works for you, what feels right, what your path may be, where you would want to go, what you would want to follow up on. And that's all a part of finding yourself, finding where you belong in the world, on your path, whatever you want to refer to it as.
This is where it gets a little interesting, too, is that when I tell people parts of my own personal story, so again, I said earlier that my family raised me as Christian, but at the same time, growing up, I had these natural inclinations toward animistic things in general, and it's. I want to say one of the things that I've taken away from my conversations with Blue is that some of these things are meant to be organic. They're not meant to be overthought. They're not meant to be overly analyzed, and they have to come from just how things are in the moment. And as a kid, I pushed away a lot of what would have otherwise been organic growth because I thought I had to for something more organized or something more logical, and it didn't. Again, those things didn't stick with me. Ultimately, the things that came organically are the things that stuck out to me. I too tried a lot of things. I pushed a lot of things away that were working, again, because it seemed like I was doing the wrong thing, being a bad kitty, or bad puppy. And that search mode had to happen for true growth to come into play. I just couldn't. I don't feel like I could really develop my own spirituality until I allowed it to develop organically.
Yeah, I think you need to try things on and see if it fits, and then what pieces are fitting, and then from there, it may be something you just naturally do, and you progress through yourself, and you augment that with bits and pieces from other things. Or sometimes there is a structure that brings something useful to you, that fits in that. I know for myself personally, when my teacher finally presented me and we started the conversations around my learning from him, everything he was saying and laying out addressed all the pieces that I'd never been able to quite get to click right, and no matter what I did. And it was just like, it was the natural, like, yeah, this is right for me. And I've been with it since. I learn, I augment it, obviously I continue to grow, but there's a core there now that I continue to work with. But it's not, if he hadn't come along, I would still be in search mode. And I'd be okay with that, honestly, because it was a really amazing time to go through all that stuff. Frustrating at times, irritating at times, but still, when I look back and in retrospect, it was an amazing time. It was so much growth, so much change, and it was fun at the end of the day too. I always felt like I was growing, and not the opposite of not growing basically is stagnation or regression. So, and I don't like either of those. So,
I want to say though that too. So when I was in my own personal search mode, this isn't going to sound really good, but I tried to tap into different things to see if there would be ways that I could p shift or find other ways either to make therianthropy go away or to make it more permanent or whatever else. And basically all of them failed. So uh, it's okay to fail. It's okay to try these things out and to realize that these things don't work. Do not blame yourself if these things don't work. Just keep going forward. Um, Eventually, you'll find some things that will work. You're not going to find things that work for p shifting. So, but as you go along, keep an open mind with yourself and also be kind to yourself. I think. I know I personally was too harsh on myself, and when I was in the search mode again, I felt guilty or bad the whole time when really I was doing nothing other than trying to be honest with myself in my personal discovery.
I think it's important. Again, like you said, be kind to yourself, but also be kind to others, and don't assume that because you found something that works for you, that it's going to work for everybody. I think it's valuable to bring it to the table, to have a conversation around it, but be open to criticism, be open to relearning, or to be open to different perspectives of what you're going through. You do not have all the answers. I certainly don't. I've been at points in my life that I thought I did, and I suffered for that in various ways. But it's important to continue to grow and to learn and to be open and accept accept others' perspectives and help others in their own path, but also recognize when someone isn't necessarily receptive or is kind of stuck on themselves or they have the answers. They may not be at the same place that you are, and maybe they will be in the future. Maybe they won't be. There's plenty of charlatans out there that'll be more than happy to convince you that they've got all the answers. Thinking of charlatans too, one thing I get very skittish around. If someone's asking you for money, probably not a good one there. To me, the way I approach spirituality, the way I approach all of it is just like the animals. I give freely of myself. I give freely of my time. I give freely of my resources. When I run a ceremony, I am running the ceremony. I am providing the food. I am providing the facilities. I am providing, all my time associated with that. I don't ask for anything from anybody other than a perfunctory ceremonial thing that goes into the ceremony itself, specifically. And that's the way it is. I will never ask for money, and I've had people try to give me money because they know how much I'm pouring into it. It's quite a bit usually when you get boiled down to it. I've refused every single time because that to me is part of what I feel is necessary, and I don't like the idea that someone would take something from somebody else when it comes to a financial obligation. If you want to bring something else and share it, by all means, we're all in this together as far as I'm concerned.
That's something that I've kind of struggled with the howls because again, it does cost money, and people acknowledge that. But I don't expect anything in return. So when people try to offer something, I'm almost there's like this spiritual crisis that goes on in the background where I'm like, no. Like the logic part of me tells me yes, money is good, but I no, I didn't do it for that. At the same time, I do want to say that again, if you do give within your means. Don't be self-sacrificial in that regard. Like don't if you're struggling to pay bills and things along those lines, just consider what you can actually give to others. Often giving does not actually mean that there is a monetary requirement. So just kind of, again, goes back to being kind to yourself. There's no need to go without in that regard. Um, and it's okay to ask help from others too. I want to loop back to another point that was made earlier. Something that I've had incredible difficulty with is being open to criticism. I have spoken very relatively minimally about my spirituality in general, so even this podcast is very hard for me to do. And I've had multiple conversations with both Blue and Storm, and I still feel kind of guarded in that regard because I don't know. I'm always afraid that I'm going to say the wrong thing and be challenged and be told that I don't know what I'm talking about or something along those lines. When really, it's the only way to grow. It's the only way to really bounce ideas off of each other. If someone challenges you, that doesn't mean you've got to be up in arms. Just take a moment. If you don't have the answers right then and there, that's fine. That's absolutely fine, and say so. But take the opportunity to challenge yourself and be like, okay, so is what I believe or what I think I've experienced make sense? If so, maybe I can help someone else shift their perspective a little bit, and if not, maybe I can shift my own perspective some.
Yeah, I think that challenging is important, and we've had some pretty good conversations. If we would have been having some more this weekend too, if things had worked out differently.
That's 2020's fault.
With COVID and everything. So
that bitch Carol Baskin.
See, you are a tiger still.
I'm an orange wolf.
And you're trying to derail me is all you're trying to do. That's what I think is what's going on here. But no, challenging, it's the only way to grow. It's the only way to change. And like I said earlier, you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. The only way we can grow is to evolve each other and, help each other and experience, all this stuff. Experience is the best teacher at the end of the day, and especially in this society today, there are so many people who get nervous as all sin about exposing themselves. I'm one of them. I don't. Doing this episode today was nerve-wracking for me leading into it. When we've talked about it a bunch of times now, I'm very guarded outside of close, very small close circles. With it, and I'm always willing to talk, but I also want to make sure that those who I'm talking to don't have a secondary agenda. What's the political angle that they're taking with that, and that's something that I'm struggling with to this day. I went through some pretty rough experiences that led to that attitude and that approach and that hesitation.
I think it's kind of funny because when you and I started talking to each other, we both approached it in that same manner because both of us had been burned in the past, and both of us, it was almost like this dance around just trying to figure out if we're safe around each other. And oh my god, I'm glad we got past that.
I'm glad we got past that too. And then I had the same with Stormy, and you were very helpful in kind of opening my eyes to that. So
I gave him the grand advice one day after he sent paragraph after paragraph. He wants to be your friend.
So, regardless on that, but it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be exposed. When you find someone you can have that relationship with and that connection with. Is it possible it could go south some point? Yes, it certainly is. Why fear it going south and embrace it for what it is today and try to grow and learn from that? That's the important thing. If there's someone that's truly going to be there and truly be a friend to you, then they're going to be there at the end of this through all the bumps and the bruises and everything like that. I've had plenty of knockdown dragouts with my teacher over time. Points that trust was injured between us, yet we still remain very close. It was part of the education process and learning each other as well. So I don't regret it, but it can be painful at times. But that's part of friendship, and again, it kind of for me again all ties back to: is there mutual respect? Is there can we find that commonality between us and latch onto that and say this is what we're really trying to strive for, and then evolve from that, not just in a spiritual sense, but as on a personal sense, too.
Spirituality is more of a personal, individual journey, the way I look at it. There will be times when some of your ways of thinking about things or looking at things will change, and that's okay. There's a fluidity in your spirituality that is being more focused on the individual and less rigid like religion. One thing I will say, when you're walking that path, your spiritual path, remember, try to stay grounded. There will be some fantastical things out there that may get you all excited, but you gotta try to keep your head on level and approach things in a grounded manner.
And to that point, we've been talking quite a bit about it amongst ourselves. Grounding yourself right now. I mean, this is a point in the world that I know I should be falling back to my spiritual roots and saying this is the thing that this is the time I need it the most to find my center, to find my grounding and all that stuff. And I have been struggling with it. It bothers me that I'm struggling as much with it, and I'm trying to find how to get back to it, and that grounding, to your point, is the key association with it. I know for me, I had some of that today, and I feel a lot better about it. I also got to muck around in my garden a little bit today, too. Finished the final till for it, so I just got to do some planting now. But that finding those things that are going to help you with your grounding, whatever it may be, is the most important thing. And yes, it is a very, very individualized experience, but we have those pieces that we share. I think that it always is a little bit better when, as a wolf, especially, sharing it amongst the family, and that a common experience is a really big thing for me. And I like that commonality, and that that back and forth, because we always come at it a little bit differently. Just like when we're looking at the fire, we're all different angles of it. It's the same fire, but we all see something a little bit different. So how do we get the whole story together for that experience?
I have to kind of laugh a little bit because a few days ago, I actually told Blue and Stormy that they were both grounded because I kind of thought that both of them need a little bit of help with doing that. And again, I think it's important to connect with others to be open in that regard, because others may be able to observe when you need that grounding too, maybe better than you do yourself. And sometimes it's hard to be vulnerable in that kind of way, but sometimes we really do need that grounding. We need the time to focus on ourselves a little bit and kind of get our heads on straight so we can be better for others.
Yeah, and you were looking out for us in that as well, and it was nice because Blue, day at the beach, in the water in the earth there, helping himself ground. Yes,
Damn
very cold water. And me, sticking my feet in the dirt, and watching the storm roll past overhead was one of the ways that I felt I could ground myself and relax and get my head on straight.
So I think it's really important, tying in with things that are going on with the current state of things. it is critically important that we do check in on each other and that we do try to make sure that we are all grounded. It's going to be in different ways. Some of us are more politically driven than others. Some of us are more emotionally or empathically driven than others. And I think the key to spirituality is it teaches us how to interact with other people. And right now, I think the world is really struggling to figure out how to do so better. I think it's critical that we try to support each other, we check in with each other, that we try to get past the superficial stuff. What's really going on right now? What can I help you with? How can we get through the day together? That kind of thing. That's why I think that, like Blue said earlier, right now it's critical for spirituality. A lot of us are kind of feeling like we're in chaos and feeling a little bit lost. And if we endure that on our own, it's only going to get worse. We have to work together to get through this.
I like that perspective, Zeph. I hadn't really given a lot of consideration to the idea that it helps us learn how to interact. I like that. I'll have to figure out how I'll have to noodle that some more, ruminate on it some.
Choo, choo, choo.
We may not all walk the same path, but a lot of the times we're heading the same direction.
There's something kind of interesting that I think of sometimes along the lines of spirituality. Humankind has been around for a very, very, very long time, and I really don't think that any one person has ever found the right way of following a spirituality or following a religion or anything along those lines. I kind of think that we are designed to work together and kind of build with each other in that regard. Like, I think that if we take the perspective that we know everything, it's going to kind of be damning to us. But I don't know. I kind of think that spirituality is also something that we are supposed to cumulatively work together toward.
Yes. I don't disagree with where you're going with that. I don't know how fast society will get there.
Very
or if society wants to get there. I know I like, from my perspective, I like the fact that there is so many different approaches to this, but what is the common roots associated with it? Why is this so pervasive? And not just the need for humans to find patterns in things and meaning in things, but just to me that seems so weak of something that's so pervasive, from isolated tribes in South America to the major the big three, so to speak, or big four if you want to get into Hinduism as well. I think that it's it's so important for that. So what is the commonality there? What is the core that it all comes down to? That's one of my goals, to try to continue to learn and find those threads, those commonalities, because I think it also just makes it so that we can relate better at the end of the day. I far prefer having a conversation with somebody when I understand where their societal background comes up. I had an employee at one point who came from India, and I explained to him that I was reading the book Advaita, and he was floored. He's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "That's just something that I do. I study these things." And he was flabbergasted, and it opened up a whole different vector of conversation that we would have never had. And it was, he approached me differently than pretty much anybody else at that point, because I was trying to understand him and where he was coming from, and he so greatly appreciated that. It really made a big difference, for me, in my role as a professional and as a manager too. I want to understand the people that I work with. I want to be able to talk to them, and better wrap my head around them, because then I can better help them at the end of the day.
It's interesting because, again, as a child, I had that natural curiosity where I wanted to know everything about everybody. And as I grew, not even blaming this on religion, but just things in general, I kind of got into certain sets of ideologies and perhaps didn't maintain the same degree of empathy and curiosity for my fellows. And it's people just want to be respected. People just want to be understood. A lot of people don't even really want to be treated special. They just want to be treated as other people, as other individuals. And it's disturbing that sometimes we are so far away from that. And again, I think the current time and things, it's good for us to try to get back to that core principle of, just being curious about each other and trying to really understand.
Well, I think that we've probably, somewhat, I think we really hit a key, what I was hoping for this initial conversation on spirituality. Maybe people were looking for something that would be more like, oh, what is your experience, or what do you do, and how do you approach it, and how does this tie into therianthropy? But I think that all this does tie into therianthropy, which is really kind of the foundation of why we as a group, do look at this stuff. For me, that's an important piece of this conversation, but it's hopefully not disappointing to anyone who's listening. But if there's questions or anything, then certainly reach out to us. And I think we could certainly have additional conversations that are more in depth on particular things. But I like this as the initial volley and conversation around it. I learned a little bit tonight, even.
Badger.
Yeah, I learned a little bit today myself too. I mean, it's nice talking about this, and as far as people trying to find their own spirituality, it's a part of what we are, a part of our humanity. Yes, I use the word humanity because I believe we're more than human and
concur.
We're all, when trying to find yourself, don't be afraid to help others find themselves. And you've heard it all over the place. We're all in this together, which we are. And I got distracted by a sweetie toy.
Okay, so any final thoughts?
When walking your own path, your own spiritual path, trying to find your spirituality, don't be afraid of change. Things will change on your viewpoints, how you see things, what their meaning is to you. Change is a part of life, and it's going to be out there. Your viewpoints are going to change. Your beliefs may change. Your life will definitely change. There's, ups and downs, and that's all a part of life. But embrace it, learn from it, share it with others to help them grow and learn.
Change is the one constant. We are in an entropic universe.
I'm sorry, are you expecting the mechanical engineer to follow up on entropy? Not gonna happen.
Oh, come on.
Too much.
Come on, it's got natural log in it, man. What are your final thoughts there, Joseph?
I just hope that what people get away from this particular episode is, again, I think what comes to mind first is be kind to yourself. But maybe what should come first is be kind to others. It's kind of a golden rule across all religions and spiritualities, isn't it? I think. Maybe not all, but a majority.
Yes.
Be
excellent to each other.
Yeah.
Be excellent to each other, yeah. So, in this current time of crisis known as 2020, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot at stake, and I think it's important to keep those principles in mind. If we are seeking any kind of progress and if we are seeking survival, we need to work together. We need to respect each other. Um, Religion and spirituality can help us get on the path that we need to be able to achieve that also.
Ultimately, it comes down to loving yourself and loving one another, and not necessarily in a sexual sense or even a platonic sense, but just genuine care and concern for not just the people on this planet, but all the animals and everything like that. We're in this together, and the planet itself.
We all share life on this same planet.
I think we should probably wrap up for tonight. We're around the mark here, and thank you for the good conversation here, guys.
And I thank you both for participating and engaging. And for our audience, definitely thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you've got something from this. Feel free to leave us feedback. This is going to be posted in a few different places. You can either respond there, or we do have an email address, which is wherearewepodcast@gmail.com. That is where as in like werewolf, WERE. So wherearewepodcast@gmail.com. And I will leave additional information in the link description for this episode. Oh, sorry, Sneppurrsode.
Sneppurrsode.
Zeph, did you want to promote Dear Badgie anymore?
And hang on for our first episode of Dear Badgie. And we will catch you all later. Okay, thanks, bye.
And now for our segment, Dear Badgie, straight perspectives on spotty questions. Today's question comes from Aaron via Twitter, who asks,
Dear Badgie, if everyone turned to therianthropy, would it be ethical to hunt and eat your friends who became prey species?
Glad you asked that, Aaron. I don't know about the ethical part, but it would sure be delicious now, wouldn't it?